Now, wearing pearls and pantyhose may not feel like a teenager's route to popularity, but Maya van Wagenen says adhering to 1950s American values has made her confident and empowered. The 15-year-old from Texas has now not only landed a book deal, but sold the film rights to Steven Spielberg to boot.
I found my thrill on Blueberry Hill.
Be downstairs and ready to go to the door when the bell rings. Do remember to introduce your date to your parents if they have not already met.
When I found you.
On a date, never put a boy in a position where he feels foolish. Don't ask to go somewhere he can't afford. Don't wear loud clothes or sloppy clothes.
1950s values may seem outdated now, but not for Maya van Wagenen, the Texas teenager who's bringing pearls, posture and etiquette to a new generation. This is the book that inspired Maya's transformation. She embarked on an experiment, spending a school year following the book's advice, going from shy and quiet to the girl everyone was talking about.
I spent most of 6th and 7th grade keeping my head down, and so I only had a very small group of friends, and generally whenever someone stood out, it was fodder for bullying, basically. By the time I hit the clothing month, people knew that something was up. And so I think that got me the most attention as far as outward appearance goes, because I came to school in skirts and pantyhose.
Her own memoir, Popular, has been snapped up by DreamWorks, making Maya the youngest non-actor to have a feature deal with the studio. So what inspiration can today's teenagers draw from a bygone era of pantyhose and girdles?
I tend to wear a lot of makeup, and maybe I think this book showed me that you don't have to wear a lot of makeup to be popular.
Well, I think there's more opportunities now for teenage girls. In those days, I guess teenage girls might have just been preparing to be a mum or a wife to someone else, but now teenage girls are planning their own futures, like the boys would have been able to do back then.
And the other half of our student body is always interested in a pretty, popular new girl.
For all its etiquette, the 1950s wasn't a particularly empowering period for women. So should teenagers be harking back to days dominated by male opinion? Well, with me now in the studio is Maya van Wagenen and the journalist and activist Caroline Criado Perez. And the two of us have quickly galloped through this book, haven't we? Now, Maya, now you're wearing a bit of pearls.
Indeed, yeah.
No skirts. How much of this did you keep up after the experiment?
For me, it's following the guide. I pulled out the best and most applicable things to today's time, and so it's about looking back in an era and drawing the most inspirational and the best suited information from it and learning from it. And for me, from Betty's book, it was the mission that we need to redefine popularity as something positive, as something based on inclusion rather than exclusion.
Just explain that a bit more. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think in a lot of media today we see popularity is built in a hierarchy, and I think in a lot of middle schools and high schools that's how it feels. And so through following Betty's book and reading reading through it and seeing that her definition of popularity was based on being kind and presenting yourself in a way that made you feel confident about yourself and about how you looked.
Are you alarmed, Caroline, about going back to the 50s?
Well, I have to say, when I first heard about it, yes, I was quite alarmed. And I think, to be fair on Maya, I think the media has not represented her book very well, because it does come across as very much all about girdles, which of course is essentially 50s Spanx and pearls. And if that were the heart of the book, then I would be very concerned, because it would be about, you know, returning to an era in which women were valued solely on the basis of their looks. But I think Maya's book is a lot more nuanced than that. Having said that, I would like if there were a book like this for boys as well. I think the one concern is that so often it's about women changing themselves to fit into society, and for women to be nice and to look nice. And
that's true, isn't it? I mean, is that just the teenage experience? Do you think?
I definitely think that it's rough. And I think
But what you did was you took yourself out of it, wasn't it? You know,
yes.
you said, I'm not going to play your game of fashion, but I'm going to invent my own, and I'm still going to draw attention to myself.
Yeah, so it wasn't as much stepping back into an era to conform to a certain belief system. It was using that specific style of dress and that to stand out in today's time and to see if that advice really worked.
I mean, I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but if you go right to the end of your book, you know, what you say is popularity is more than looks. It's not clothes, hair or even possessions. Isn't your experience really about confidence?
Definitely.
You know, the era you chose is kind of irrelevant, isn't it?
Well, it's honestly the message of Betty Cornell's book, when you get right down to it, is you have, if you are confident and if you are kind and if you spread that positive message, you can make friends and you can feel better about yourself. And I think that's a timeless message that no matter what era it came from, it's definitely applicable.
But in the real world, Caroline, you can't just go up to people on the whole and say, "Hi, I'm Maya," and make friends and everything
try.
working fine. I mean, you know, is this all just a bit idealistic, cosseted?
I don't think it's necessarily idealistic and cosseted. I think, you know, it's obviously worked very, very well for Maya, and that's really great to see. I mean, my only concern is, as I say, that I think that we need to have a book like this for guys, because so often it is about focusing on women and getting them to change to fit into a social structure, rather than changing a social structure so that, I mean, I suppose the main thing that I sort of felt quite sad about when I read a review of your book was that you described yourself, I think it was a Hobbit-loving nerd. And I just thought, how sad that you can't be a Hobbit-loving nerd and be popular. There's something very wrong with the world.
It is sad, and I think now, I think there's, I was talking with someone today about owning that geekiness, and I think Betty Cornell, reading her book and teaching, basically it taught me how to be confident in my own skin.
Do you feel you ended up owning your geekiness
Totally.
at the end of this?
Totally, and I think that,
Because you don't look very geeky now.
well, I left my
What
glasses
does
at
looking
home.
geeky mean anyway?
I'm a geek on the inside. I wore a Star Trek shirt and Doctor Who socks this morning, so you just didn't see me earlier.
So, and do you think that there are tips for young people in this book?
Definitely, I think there are tips.
This is a life manual.
Well, maybe. I don't know. There are tips for everyone, I think, and everybody draws something different from it. I get messages from readers from all ages, men and women, and there was, you know, a message the other day of someone said, "I'm a 57-year-old man and your book made me cry." And so I'm like, so maybe it's a little bit timeless in that respect.
Maya, Caroline, thank you both very much indeed.
Thank you.
John.
Thank goodness that makes two of us. I left my glasses home, but I got contact lenses.